We are almost end at the 2025 NBA playoffs. It is conference finals time. So for today's video, I wanted to look back at the massive, iconic 2025 trade deadline and regrade how those trades ended up in this year's regular season and playoffs and how they still look long term. Because I will say a lot has changed since February's deadline, where we just saw massive deals go down left and right, including the biggest trade in NBA history, in my opinion. And even some of those trades gave a direct fallout to what's about to come this upcoming offseason. So the first deal we're going to talk about was a 3-team deal that was a little bit head scratching at the time. We all thought it was going to lead to a much bigger deal eventually. That didn't happen, and that was the 3-team trade that sent Marcus Smart, Colby Jones, Alex Len, and the Memphis Grizzlies' first-round pick this year, lottery protected, to the Washington Wizards. Memphis received Marvin Bagley, Johnny Davis, and 2 second-round picks, and the Sacramento Kings received Jake LaRavia. So we're going to start off with the Washington Wizards here, and I'm still going to give them an A for this trade. I loved it when it happened, and I love it right now. This is what bad rebuilding teams should do: absorb bad contracts and get additional draft picks for doing so. And Marcus Smart's contract is far from being one of the worst in the leagues, because it basically had a year and a half remaining. Next year, he's on the books for $21.5 million for a team that isn't going to be a big player in free agency, and they are completely off the books for it. But they also got Memphis's lottery protected pick. And after the deadline, Memphis went on a downward spiral in the Western Conference standings. They fired their head coach. They ended up in the play-in tournament and even made Wizards fans and their front office sweat and root for the Memphis Grizzlies in the play-in tournament so they can get this first-round pick. So they basically got the 18th overall pick, a good veteran guard that's won a Defensive Player of the Year award in his career. This is a young team, and they needed somebody like Marcus Smart in that locker room, a good veteran that basically this young core has never had. It's the on the court, it's the off the court, and getting the 18th overall pick in the draft for just taking on Smart for a year. Yeah, this is an A trade for Washington. And for Memphis, I'm going to give it a D. They could really use the 18th overall pick in this year's draft. I'm sure they didn't expect to fire Taylor Jenkins a few weeks after the trade deadline, or they were going to fall all the way to the 8th seed in the playoffs and get swept in round number 1. We all thought that after this deal was made, they were trying to create some money to go out and get Kevin Durant, or at least land some big name. And I feel like the Memphis Grizzlies in their front office has been so conservative in making big time moves over the last few years that the Memphis Grizzlies had one of the brightest futures, and now it's going to be in limbo this offseason. So I'm going to give Memphis a D for this trade. I would have liked if they had the 18th overall pick. Marvin Bagley was playing key minutes for them in the playoffs, so it all came crashing down in 2025 for Memphis. And for Sacramento, you traded away Colby Jones and Alex Len to take a flyer on Jake LaRavia, who didn't get his 4th-year team option picked up on his rookie deal by Memphis, but honestly, he's still 23 years old. They need as much depth as possible, and I think he can contribute a little bit better than what Colby Jones or Alex Len could have down the line. So I'm going to give them a B here. Next one up was a trade that included a player we thought should have been moved maybe the year prior to this, and I think they traded him way too late. This was the deal that sent Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans Pelicans to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for Bruce Brown, an expiring contract, Kelly Olynyk, a first-round pick, but from the Indiana Pacers in next year's draft, and a second rounder. So for the Raptors, I'm going to give them an incomplete, but I am going to be a little skeptical about this deal just because they just gave Brandon Ingram $120 million. How is he going to look with Scotty Barnes? It is a shame we didn't get to see them play one single minute together in the 2025 season. Ingram was an incredible player for the Pelicans back in 2023, but had somewhat of a down year in 2024 to his standards. He likes the mid-range jumper. He likes to have the ball in his hand, so we're going to see how that's going to look in Toronto's offense, but he's trying to share that ball with Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Scotty Barnes, their franchise players. So I'm going to give them an incomplete. I don't love the contract extension, but they had to do it, and getting somebody at Brandon Ingram's caliber for what they gave up, it's still a good deal at the moment. As for the Pelicans, I'm going to give them a C here. At least they got something for Brandon Ingram, who is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and they never really wanted to give him that contract extension. But Kelly Olynyk is a fine big man to have in your rotation, but he's 34 years old. He's under contract for one more year after this year. They got Bruce Brown, who's a good role-playing wing, but he hasn't looked like the same player since the Denver Nuggets days playing with Nikola Jokic, and sometimes when players leave Denver and don't play with Jokic anymore, they don't look as good. So we'll see what that extension looks like for Bruce Brown in New Orleans this offseason if they agree to terms, because they kind of have to. He was the best player that came back in this trade. And they got the Pacers first-round pick for the 2026 draft. Now, you never know what can happen next year to Indiana. There could be some injuries, or maybe they shake up the roster this offseason, but they're in the conference finals right now. They're one of the best teams in the NBA, and if they're going to at least just make it to round 2 next year, that pick isn't going to have a ton of value when you gave up somebody like Brandon Ingram for it at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm going to give them a C here. At least they got something, but it really wasn't, I think, equal value to what they should have got for Brandon Ingram had they moved him the offseason prior. The Jimmy Butler deal ended up being a 5-teamer. I'm only going to talk about 3 teams involved in this deal. The first first one, we'll talk about the Golden State Warriors. They basically gave up Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder, a 2031 second round pick, and a 2025 top 10 protected first round pick for Jimmy Butler, some seconds, and cash considerations. For Golden State, I'm going to give them an A-. And you might be like, Matt, why aren't you giving them an A? It's just because of the Jimmy Butler contract that came after it, and Jimmy didn't really look as locked in round number 2 against Minnesota. Was still a good player, and he definitely benefited being kind of a Robin to Steph Curry's Batman. But I thought maybe we could still see playoff Jimmy one last time, and he can carry the Golden State Warriors with the Steph Curry hamstring injury, but that never happened, and he's about to make a lot of money in this upcoming extension this offseason. It's going to be over $50 million a year for the next 2 seasons. He's not getting any younger, so I'm a little hesitant to give that an A just because I'm a little more pessimistic on their future with Jimmy Butler at this age, at this point of his career. But the fact that they went on that run after acquiring him, we thought that there was a chance they weren't even going to make the play-in tournament or be an 8 seed and lose round 1. They ended up winning their play-in tournament game, becoming the 7th seed, beating the 2-seeded Houston Rockets in round number 1. They went up 3-1. They lost 2 in a row, but won game 7. They even took game 1 against Minnesota, but it is a shame that Steph Curry got hurt. It's not Jimmy Butler's fault that Curry got hurt, but I do think they still make this trade in hindsight no matter what. For Miami, I'm actually going to give them a B-. I'm glad they got something for Jimmy Butler had he just opt out in the offseason and you got nothing for him. And although the East was semi-wide open this year, as we could see, Cleveland and Boston both ended up losing in round number 2. I don't think the Heat with Jimmy Butler were going to make a run in the playoffs, so they got Andrew Wiggins, not the worst contract in the world, not the worst player either. We'll see if they leverage his money in a bigger deal this offseason. I don't love the Kyle Anderson contract, but he's a solid veteran to have on your team. And they also got Davion Mitchell by roping in the Raptors into this 5-team deal, who really looks like he could be a long-term player in Miami and was great for them down the stretch and in the playoffs / play-in tournament. And they got the Warriors first round pick this year. It's going to be at the mid to end part of the first round, but at least they can add something after losing their first round pick this year to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And for the Pistons, I'm going to get them involved in this grading. I'm going to give them a B+ because I thought Dennis Schroeder was a massive pickup for them down the stretch, and he really played good defense when he could on Jalen Brunson in the playoffs in round number 1 and helped the Detroit Pistons and their second unit stay afloat when Cade Cunningham was off the floor. He tries very hard on that end. He had some really good 3-point shooting games against the Knicks in round number 1 as well, and they basically didn't have to give up a lot for him. It technically came out to just 1 second-round pick. Yeah, I'd make that any day of the week, and they could re-sign Schroeder this offseason. I thought this deal was a little bit of a head-scratcher for Atlanta at the time. I think they could have just waited to the offseason to trade DeAndre Hunter, especially since they didn't have their first-round pick. So yeah, this is going to be the DeAndre Hunter to Cleveland deal in exchange for Karis LeVert, George Niang, 3 second-round picks, and 2 first-round pick swaps down the line. Now, I don't think when these swaps are going to come into effect, Atlanta is going to be better than Cleveland, so it's worth it, but you never really know in the NBA. Cleveland may have some big decisions to make this offseason because they are going to be a second apron team. And although DeAndre Hunter fit this team like a glove, he's making over $20 million for the next 2 years when they're going to have some financial decisions to make. So for Cleveland, I'm giving them a B+. He looked great on that team. And in those 27 regular season games that Hunter played in for Cleveland, they went 21-6. So obviously it worked out with him on the floor. They're just going to have some bigger picture moves to make this offseason, but I still think they made out very well in this deal. For Atlanta, I definitely did not like the deal initially when they made it because I was scared they were going to bottom out this year. They were going to give San Antonio a top pick in this draft. That pick ended up being 14. Karis LeVert actually looked like a good veteran scoring wing for them off the bench. I'd like to see them bring him back this offseason. Same with George Niang, who's under contract going forward, but is a solid veteran to have there. We'll see if those swaps can end up becoming anything down the line or if they hit on one of those second-round picks. So I'm going to give Atlanta a C+, better than what I gave them back at the deadline. One of the more head-scratching moves when it happened, I didn't like it initially, and it did not age well. And this was the Kyle Kuzma from Washington to Milwaukee trade at the deadline. The Bucks received Kyle Kuzma, Jericho Sims after roping in the Knicks in a 3-team deal, and they sent DeLon Wright to New York, a 2025 second-rounder and a 2026 second-rounder, and they gave up Chris Middleton, one of their best players in franchise history that was owed over $30 million next year, AJ Johnson, their most recent first-round pick, a 2028 first-round pick swap because they didn't really have much draft capital to give up to begin with, and DeLon Wright also went to the Knicks. So we're just going to grade Milwaukee and Washington sides of this deal. For Milwaukee, I'm giving it an F. This Kyle Kuzma contract is an absolute albatross right now. He's owed over $20 million, both in 2026 and 2027, and I know they made this deal to get under the second apron and have some more flexibility down the line, but the wrinkle effect from this deal did not end up well. I don't know if there's any team out there that wants to take this Kyle Kuzma contract this offseason. You traded away a franchise legend. You traded away your most recent first-round pick, AJ Johnson, who you drafted to develop over time because he was not NBA ready, and he really showed a little bit of promise down there in DC. And you also give him a 2028 first-round pick swap. What if you trade Giannis Antetokounmpo this offseason and you're bad in 2028? This is just a major F for Milwaukee. And then John Horst got rewarded with a contract extension this offseason. Didn't really make a lot of sense. And then for the Wizards, I'm giving them an A. Kyle Kuzma was one of your veterans on this team, and they replaced basically Kyle Kuzma with Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart, some veterans that have actually played in big-time playoff games before, in NBA Finals games before as their veterans. That is just an A in its own right. And then you also got the 18th pick in this draft in the Marcus Smart deal, but in this deal specifically, you get AJ Johnson, somebody that has very high potential in this league, a very good ball handler or an athlete at his size, and a 2028 swap for Kyle Kuzma. I think Washington made out very well in this deal. We'll go back to the Atlanta Hawks when they made a deal with the LA Clippers. They sent Bogdan Bogdanovic, who was not shooting the ball well for them this season, over to LA in exchange for Terrence Mann, former first-round pick Bones Highland, and 3 second-rounders. For the LA Clippers, I'm going to give them a B+ in this deal. Bogey shot 30% from 3 over in Los Angeles, and he shot 42% from 3, up 12% from Atlanta. He got a lot better looks playing over there in Los Angeles. He loved the connection and the relationship with Ivica Zubac over there. I know he was inconsistent for them in the playoffs, but Terrence Mann just signed that contract extension. They were going to have some big financial decisions to make coming up. They got a bad draw in the playoffs because I thought the Clippers could have been maybe a sneaky conference tournament team if they were on the other side of the bracket, but getting Denver in round number 1 was a tough matchup. Bogdan Bogdanovic has a $16 million contract next year, which they can move this offseason, and it's basically an expiring because it has a team option for 2027. I think it gives Los Angeles a little bit more flexibility going forward. Terrence Mann was also a lot better when he changed teams at the deadline, so it does feel like this was a win-win deal. Played some solid defense over there, still just 28 years old and has a good tradable contract going forward. They also got 3 second-rounders in this deal, so I'm going to give this a B+ as well. Like I said, I think this was a win-win trade for both parties. The LA Clippers also made another move at the deadline. It was a 1-for-1 player trade. They sent Kevin Porter Jr. over to Milwaukee in exchange for Marjon Beauchamp. I guess I could technically give the Clippers an F here, as Beauchamp didn't really end up becoming anything for them, as he was waived by the Clippers less than a month after acquiring him, and Kevin Porter Jr. was a very productive player for the Milwaukee Bucks down the stretch, so I'll give Milwaukee an A here. I guess I technically have to give LA an F. And like Terrence Mann, Kevin Porter Jr. was a lot better after getting traded. He even had a playoff performance where he dropped 23 points and 6 assists in game number 4. He does have a player option this offseason, so we'll see if Milwaukee re-signs him. Smaller trade here as the Washington Wizards traded away Jonas Valanciunas to Sacramento in exchange for Sidy Cissoko and 2 future second-round picks. I'm going to give Washington a C+ in this deal. Hey, you ended up signing Jonas Valanciunas in the offseason prior. You traded him for Sidy Cissoko and 2 future second-round picks. Those could end up becoming something. Maybe they could have gone a little bit better than that value that they got back, maybe a different player. But either way, hey, you got something for somebody that really wasn't going to be in your long-term plans. And for Sacramento, I'm actually going to give them a B in this deal. I really like Jonas Valanciunas as a backup center in the NBA. He's got that relationship with Domantas Sabonis over there, and when Domas went down with the injury late in the year, he stepped in just fine. So I'm going to give them a B. This is the first Dallas Mavericks trade we're going to talk about. It's going to be the lesser of the two, but it was still a massive one to look back on, as the Dallas Mavericks traded away Quentin Grimes and a 2025 second-round pick to the Philadelphia 76ers for Caleb Martin. So obviously there could have been a domino effect to all of this. If Quentin Grimes stayed as a Dallas Maverick, who knows how many games they could have won down the stretch if he went off like that, and maybe they don't end up getting Cooper Flagg. So hey, you never know. But for this trade specifically, I'm going to give Dallas a D and Philadelphia an A, as Caleb Martin was hurt after the Dallas Mavericks acquired him. They also gave up a second-rounder in this deal because, yeah, like I said, I'm giving Philadelphia an A for this deal. Quentin Grimes was phenomenal in the second half of the season for Philadelphia. 21.9 points, 47% from the field, 37% from 3 in 28 games. He's not going to average those numbers next year with Maxey, McCain, Paul George, and Embiid out there with him, but he could end up winning 6th Man of the Year next year. He's going to be an elite 4th option as a scorer in the half court for this Philadelphia 76ers team. He is a restricted free agent at the end of the year, though, so I'm very interested to see what team maybe throws $20+ million a year at Quentin Grimes, and Philly has to match it, right? Second to last trade here was the massive 3-team trade after the Sacramento Kings traded away their franchise star Darren Fox to the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs also received Jordan McLaughlin in this deal. The Sacramento Kings received Zach LaVine, a 2025 first-round pick, lottery protected from the Hornets. That ended up becoming seconds. A 2027 first-round pick via the Spurs, a 2031 first-round pick from the Timberwolves, and 3 future second-round picks, while the Bulls received Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and a 2025 first-round pick back from the Spurs, which was originally their pick that had a top 10 protection on it. So we'll start off with the San Antonio Spurs. I'm giving them an A. They basically promised Darren Fox an extension that I expect to happen this offseason, but I really think they got a player of Fox's caliber for 50 cents on the dollar. They didn't really trade away that many valuable first-round picks, including their first-round pick this year that ended up moving up to number 2 in the lottery. The Kings didn't even get back their first-round pick down the line that they gave up for DeMar DeRozan in the offseason, and San Antonio got an all-star caliber point guard to pair it with Victor Wembanyama. We saw them play not a lot of games together this season, but it looked very exciting when they were out there. He fits the timeline with Wemby going forward, and I think even with the extension coming for De'Aaron Fox, they got a steal acquiring him. So yeah, they are getting an A for this deal. For Chicago, I'm going to give them a B for this deal. They got their first-round pick. They traded away Zach LaVine maybe a year or two too late, but they finally headed it in a different direction. Now, they didn't lose that many games in the second half as maybe they should have. They looked a lot of fun out there with Matas Buzelis, Kobe White, despite Trey Jones and Josh Giddey all playing very well. And if they lost a couple more games, they could have ended up with the #1 overall pick. But hey, you never know. Hindsight is 2020. I think the Bulls made out well in this deal. Trey Jones looks like he could be a solid young piece going forward, but allowed more opportunity for some of the other guys down the line. And they got their first round pick back, which was top 10 protected. They ended up becoming the number 12th pick in the NBA draft. So hey, they don't make this deal, maybe they don't get their first round pick. And for Sacramento, I'm going to give them a D+. I just don't love this return for them. And we saw them just kind of be stagnant after this deal. They fired Mike Brown shortly before this deal happened. They ended up losing in the play-in tournament, and this team is getting older. They're built around DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. That duo did not really work out long-term in Chicago. And Domantas Sabonis, who's making major money going forward. And I think this team has massive decisions to make this offseason because the Western Conference is getting better and better around them. They weren't a playoff team this year. You expect the Spurs and the Mavericks to be a lot better next year. Even the Pelicans and the Blazers as well. And I just can't see the Kings being a playoff team next year with this core right now. And the one major exciting piece they had going forward is now in San Antonio. So yeah, it's a D+. And lastly, let's talk about the trade that I hinted out beginning in the video. We're going to save the best for last. Luka Donic to the LA Lakers. It technically ended up being a 3-teamer with the Utah Jazz. We're only going to talk about the Mavericks and the Lakers sides. The Lakers received Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris. The Dallas Mavericks received Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a 2029 first-round pick. So for the LA Lakers, I'm still going to give it an A+. I know they lost in round number 1 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, but I even said after this deal happened that they probably were not going to make a run in the playoffs. I was worried about their defense with this current roster that they have right now. And yeah, Luka does not look like rookie Luka Doncic or even 2022 Dallas Mavericks Luka Doncic, but he still put up 28 points, 8 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and shot 38% from 3 in the 28 regular season games with the Lakers. And the Lakers just basically got a life raft for their future. I was very worried on how this team was going to look post LeBron James, but now they have somebody that is a 26-year-old walking triple-double that they can at least build around going forward. Maybe Luka isn't looked at as the high status he had a couple years ago, and maybe some guys have passed him in the NBA pecking order, but he's still a top 10 player in this league. He's still just 26 years old, and if they re-sign him this offseason, they're just going to be fine going forward. And for the Dallas Mavericks, I'm going to give them a C. Yeah, I originally gave them an F for this deal. I'm giving it a C because of what happened in the draft lottery. With Luka Doncic, you never know. They got bailed out. They really did. I mean, if you're looking at this trade in a vacuum, it's an easy F. Trading away your 25-year-old franchise superstar, just gut-wrenching this roster, trading him out of nowhere, backstabbing him and sending him to LA, yeah, that's an F. I'm not going to sugarcoat that one. But the fact that they were able to get Cooper Flagg in the draft lottery, I'm just going to help out the Dallas Mavericks fans here and give you something to be excited about. So they're getting a C. Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg excites me a lot going forward with this team. But if Nico Harrison takes Dylan Harper #1 or trades this pick, this is going back to an F-. Honestly, I'll give it a Z letter grade. So that is going to be for me. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with from my regrades of the 2025 trade deadline. It's going to be a fascinating one to look back on down the line. And make sure you are subscribed because, hey, at the 2026 trade deadline, I'll regrade this deadline a year later as well. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.